In the world of road racing, club racers seem to be regarded as the dumbest drivers possible. Why else would all their races be organised on tiny sections of track rather than the full thing? The organisers are clearly worried that the drivers cannot memorise more than a mile of track. Of course, in some ways they must be the sharpest drivers too, as they have to navigate a sea of orange cones or pick out tiny sections of removed Armco barrier, revealing an otherwise hidden piece of tarmac that allows them to cut out huge portions of circuit and create these tiny layouts. I was intrigued and captivated by the news that iRacing had picked the Misano Club layout for the Clio Cup schedule for Season 4 2025, especially when I learned that this has a 32-second lap time in that car. 32 seconds! I've had longer sneezes than that. This got me wondering, are there many more tiny layouts on iRacing? Well, it turns out there are absolutely loads of them, enough in fact for a whole season. Now you might be thinking of this version of the Red Bull Ring with this ludicrous cut through. Or this, the Southwest Circuit at the Bend, but both of these are too big for what we are looking for. So too a Knock Hill National layout, and even the diminutive Jefferson Circuit at Summit Point is longer than the 12 tracks I've found. The only criteria I had were that these were road tracks and not an oval, which means the infamous Knock Hill Tri-Oval was out. I'll be scoring the tracks on two things, drivability and racing potential. So without further ado, here are the 12 tracks from longest to shortest. Thanks to Formula 1, the Circuit de Catalunya has always been unfairly maligned as being a boring track that's impossible to overtake on, where in fact it's a pretty decent track with lots of challenging corners and elevation changes. The club layout hurts that argument quite a lot. It's the first 5 corners of the GP track before a double apex right-hander deposits you awkwardly in front of turn 1 for another lap. The car is turning for almost the entire lap. You could measure the straights of this Paw Patrol stationary set. And yet despite all of that, because of the width of the Grade 1 tarmac, there are opportunities for overtaking into turns 4, 5 and 6, so this isn't a terrible circuit. Snetterton 100 is the first appearance of a ridiculously tight hairpin on this list, a common feature on many of these tiny layouts, but it does create a good opportunity for passing into the Agostini hairpin if you can stay close through the long left of Palmer. Hamilton is a decent quick left and Oggies is a tight right, and that's about the size of it for this track. It's not bad, but it is missing all the best bits of Snetterton. Nurburgring GP track is a great circuit, I'm a big fan, but the Müllenbach Schliefer is a steaming pile of horse manure. Turn 1 is the second part of Coca-Cola Corner, after which you flow down the hill to the Goodyear Kia as normal. This is still a brilliant corner, but that can't save the track. Exiting the Schumacher S, you are immediately hard on the brakes to turn right to follow a stupid little piece of tarmac that switches back on itself before you exit back into the middle of the Coca-Cola Corner. This is all just too tight and too fiddly to make racing work as the cars get strung out. The pit lane made out of the real track is kind of funny, but really just don't bother with this one. The eastern complex of Zandvoort is surgically removed from the rest of the track to produce this little oddity. It's another track where you'll be turning almost the entire time and the straights are invisible. That's not to say it is all bad. Schivlach and Masters are my favourite corners at Zandvoort and they're both here. So too is the hilarious pit lane solution iRacing had to come up with for this one. Unfortunately, unlike Barcelona, this layout doesn't lend itself particularly well to racing and you'll be reduced to dive bombs into the tight corners to make a pass work. Cadwell Park is famously great for hot lapping, terrible for racing, and the Woodland section of the track is the main section which makes racing here a nightmare. So making an entire circuit out of the Woodland section is impressively bad. It's a bit like making your partner entirely from feet and the skin from the back of your elbow. Turn 1 is yet another impossibly tight hairpin, which means even if you do get down the inside of someone, you probably aren't going to be able to get round the corner. Elsewhere on the track, you'll be reduced to a punt to pass or a dive bomb into turn 8. All 3 of Navarra's circuits are called speed circuits. I don't know why, but I found that interesting. This is the shortest one at just 1.36 kilometres and with 9 corners. Because it's a modern track, it has those horrible angular corners that just feel really unnatural and soulless. But on the plus side, the track was designed for all 3 length layouts, and that means this little track does make for decent racing. If you can keep it tight to your opponents through the tight complex of corners 1 to 4, then you've got a good chance of making a pass down the backstretch or enjoying some side by side all the way back to T1. I do feel like we need to raise a safety concern for the flagman though. It's always struck me that the designer of Oschersleben put a lot of time and effort into the top end of the circuit, but then the budget ran out and he half-arsed the last 4 corners to finish the job. The C circuit uses some of those great early corners such as Triple, the Chicane and McDonald's, combined with a weird 180 degree sweep back into the entry to Triple. It's one of those bits of tarmac where you don't feel like you're in the right place, the lines look wrong, and the lack of distinguishing features are a bit troubling to the brain. This layout loses so much of what makes Oschersleben a good track, and the racing suffers as a result. Not one that I recommend. Oran Park really divides opinion among drivers. Some people like me appreciate it for what it is, or was. Others celebrate that it was bulldozed and replaced by a housing estate and lament that they weren't the ones driving the bulldozers. But I think everyone can unite behind the opinion that all 3 of the Oran Park North layouts are utter garbage and should never be driven on. You've got the North layout itself, which is a super short figure of 8. At least it utilises most of the north end of the full track. Then you've got North A, which features 2 of the ultra tight and hateful hairpins I despise, and it ruins Champion Curve. And finally you've got North B. Look at this! I've seen wider ramps in a multi-storey car park. There is such a thing as less is more, and this proves it. The track that inspired the video, and at less than 1,000 metres long, it really is pokey. There is an overtaking opportunity into turn 1, but nothing else on the track really offers you much in the way of a passing place, the cut through feeding you right into the heart of the main track's turn 2. I don't really have much to say about it really. It's not as awful as I was expecting, but it isn't as good as you'd want it to be either. It's the tarmac equivalent of a shrug and the word meh. The Memer's Meme Track. Tsukuba 1000 is often the joke suggestion layout in the limited adhesion. In the right car, this can be a surprisingly fun track for a race, and in a very tight and twisty sort of way, it's also quite fun to drive. But on the flip side, too many corners are hairpins and the straights are too short to make it a great mini track, so most races will be a train or a dive bomb fest. So if you don't like Tsukuba 2000, you won't have fun here. Lurking between the Mercedes curve and the stadium section of Hockenheim is the Porsche Experience Centre. It is an eye-boggling mass of wiggly bits of tarmac that on iRacing can form a choice of 4 different layouts. The one we are interested in here is the West layout. At just 450 metres total length and 48 metres wide, this track would fit on the deck of the Seawise Giant supertanker. It really is that small. It is also almost completely useless for racing. Even in a small car like the Clio, the wriggly bit of the track is single file, meaning a door-banging lunge into one of the 2 hairpins is the only way to make a pass. There is a straight, but it is very short. On your own there is a certain pleasure in nailing the lap, but after 5 minutes that pleasure is gone. If this was a go-kart track it would be phenomenally fun and spacious, but trying to fit cars around here is all a bit silly. It is perhaps appropriate that the shortest road track on iRacing is located in hell. At just 730 metres in length, less than half a mile, it is absolutely tiny, ferociously bumpy, and far more fun than it has any right to be. There is a slightly longer version at 1.01 kilometres, but I'll focus on the short. When you first drive it, I will warn you that you're going to get lost. A lot. And there is a roundabout making up one of the corners. The curbs look like jagged mountains that will rip the underside of your car off in a very scary manner, but when you charge down the hill into turn 3 and 4, this track will put a smile on your face. I race in VR and this felt like some of the best kart tracks that I've ever driven on. That feeling of getting the nose in and planting the throttle, the GR86 engine roaring as you power towards the outside wall and just miss it for the short straight to turn 5. It was just astonishing. Cal was the only man interested in racing with me when I put this up as a hosted race, and both of us agreed that this was enormous fun. I think it would work with more cars as well, in a way that I just can't see with some of the other tracks in this list. Whether you race the short or long version of this track, Hell shows us what a small layout can be and how fun they could be with a little thought behind them. Well, there you go guys, that was the 12 shortest tracks on iRacing. What is your favourite short track and why? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time.